Vanessa Lam creates dialogue between collage and expressive gestural painting. Lam was awarded the Vancouver Regional Award and Grand Prize Award for the 2017 Bombay Sapphire Artisan Series. As part of her award, she collaborated with Artsy for her first solo exhibition in New York. Her work has been featured in Create Magazine and Uppercase Magazine. Lam was recently an artist in residence at the TAC Projectrum in Berlin, Germany. Her work can be found in private collections in Vancouver, Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles. She currently lives and works in Vancouver, British Columbia. So welcome, Vanessa.
Thanks.
Yeah. So Vanessa, you are essentially an abstract expressionist painter. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's probably a good description.
Do you want to just kind of describe your work?
I think that the way I work, it's very much process oriented. And I think it probably comes from being mostly self-taught and that I really want to explore and try different things. And, it's very much about movement and really large gestural marks, but also contrasting with arted shapes and different ways of making marks.
What drew you to that particular type of art making?
I think I've been thinking a lot about sort of where my art fits and sort of how I came about to do this kind of style of working. And I do reference abstract expressionism. It is a way that I can really be free in terms of how I express myself. And I think the core of it is really about emotion. And I think that it's a response to some of the tension that I'm feeling around my upbringing in terms of how we express our emotions and also with growing up in Vancouver. Like, emotions aren't necessarily something we talk about, and it's also something that not necessarily encouraged to share. It's more acceptable to be more to show emotional restraint, I guess. And so I feel like art has found a way, the painting has found a way to kind of be a release for me to be able to really express all the things that I've been keeping inside and really allow myself to occupy space for self-expression. And
that is so interesting, Vanessa. I think that's wonderful. That says a lot, because I do find, your gestural work to be very emotive and full of life and expression.
So it's really I find that really it's about the ability to have that variety of choice in terms of materials. And it's very much intuitive to me. I don't necessarily come with a plan. So I really have to kind of rely on how I'm feeling and kind of responding to all the things that I put down on the canvas or the panel, and kind of go from there. So I also do collage, and the collage kind of helps me, give me some structure, gives me a chance to kind of play and experiment with shape and form, and that also then informs my painting and vice versa. So I find that the variety going back and forth is really important to have that fluidity, but also gives me a break from if I'm stuck on a painting. And so also gives me more options in terms of things to work on. Yeah, I think that there's this element of chance that's what I really like about it, is that I don't really know that sometimes what will happen, but I do have a sense, because I've practiced, making some of these, using these materials or making these marks. So I kind of have a sense of where it's going to go, but then there's this kind of element of surprise sometimes when you kind of come back the next day when it's dry, and I'm like, wow, this is better than I expected, or maybe not so much. And you kind of go from there. And I think there's also this idea that people always think that it's never a mistake per se. There's always there's intention behind it. It's really up to you if you want to decide to keep it or not. And so there's a lot of decision making that comes from, this kind of process. So it can be, that's why I kind of need a lot of breaks, because it can be kind of very all consuming at times.
Mm-hmm.
But I really do enjoy that process because it's not always the same.
It seems to me that there's kind of a push-pull between being in the moment responding to how you're feeling, dropping down your lines and your marks, and then also real consideration about composition and just elements of design. So what I see in your work is that these are marks that come down fast, maybe, but then they're also very well considered.
I think that's exactly that. It's not that I just go straight to the canvas and start immediately. Sometimes it does happen, but there's been a lot of sketching or other types of collage making that has happened to lead up to that moment, and so a lot of the times I'm doing these really loose drawings or paintings, and it's just really sketches to warm up. But sort of I always compare it to, say, you're doing like stretching or warm up before you go for a run. It's the same time to body warmed up. It's the same thing. It's that I'm trying to warm myself up and remember the motions and the movements to make these kinds of marks, so that I can then translate it to what I want to do on a large painting or whatever I'm working on.
What kind of ideas and concepts influence your work, besides just the emotional expression, which I think is hugely important? What else do you find that influences your work?
Well, a lot of it comes from my everyday observations and my experiences from being in the city, but also I'm really connected to being in the outdoors, the mountains. Climbing and mountain biking are really part of my life. And so this the idea of being outdoors, like the expansive space, I think that's sort of something that I refer to in my work. I'm translating all these experiences and feelings that I've seen and experienced, but into the painting, into movement and form. Keep a list of all these ideas of things that I pop into my head when I'm not in the studio to kind of refer back to them, so that there's always something that I could pull from or just keep things moving, keep things fresh.
There are a lot of myths about what it means to be an artist. And I'm wondering if you could just list like the skills and maybe characteristics of what makes you kind of a successful artist. What is it that you're doing? What are the skills that you have? Maybe even like in the studio or out of the studio that help to make you a successful artist.
Yeah, I think that I'm still figuring a lot of that out, but I think that definitely being flexible, being open and willing to learn has been really key for me to grow as an artist. A lot of it is like really hard work and dedication to and focus, because there's so many things that you can do or feel like you need to do. It can be overwhelming, and I think that that's sort of things that I've learned, just to be able to break it down. Okay, what can I actually physically do, and is there someone that I could learn from, or some tools that I could use, and just do it bit by bit. For example, the very first website that I built, I taught myself using YouTube videos and things online, and that was and WordPress at that time was really kind of early stages, so it was very clunky and not very user friendly, but all through blood, sweat, and tears, I did it, and that was one of the biggest things that I've learned, and in terms of achievements in the early part. And so that's one of those things, and putting shows together is just sort of, you kind of have to just figure it out and do it. I mean, I think back when I started, there was a lot less resources than there are now, and I think there's a lot more connections and things that are available now to kind of get people going.
It's never been easier, but it's still very hard.
Yes.
I don't want to say hard because I don't want to deter anybody, but at the same time, it is that you have to be organized. Once you're finished your body of work, which seems like what it's all about, then you're going to, into this whole other aspect of what it means to be an artist, like engaging with community, a gallery, online sales, all that kind of stuff. And it does take a lot of organization.
It does. Yeah, it's like it's running a business. And I think that's sort of what I like about it, is that there's all these different facets of being an artist. You have to be sort of multi-skilled and in different areas to be able to kind of do this kind of work.
What has been one of the most challenging art projects you've ever done, and why was it challenging? And what did you learn from it?
So probably one of the most challenging projects that I've done was to make work and coordinate a show in New York. It was the first big sort of show that I had internationally, and this was because of my the award that I had with the Artisan Series that I got to collaborate with Artsy. So they're really supportive of me to do new work. But it was a lot to do in 4 months' time to be able to make new work.
When you were making that work, you won a prize, and then all of a sudden this prize meant that you had to make another body of work that was going to go to New York, which is like pretty high stakes. So how did you feel about making work under pressure like that? Like, how was that? Did it help your body of work, or was it debilitatingly stressful, or where in that where in that spectrum did you fall?
So it was tough. It was because not only in this show did I have to make new paintings, but they were really supportive of me really stretching myself, and I really wanted to take advantage of that. So not only did I make just paintings, but I also made the largest painting I ever made, which is just under 12 feet wide, about 7 feet tall, and then also decided to make an installation, which was also something I'd never done before. And so then had to figure out how to do that. So there's a lot of moving parts in this, but and because of that, it was stressful. But I also am really grateful because it really pushed me to make things that I probably wouldn't have done before, and take more risk as well, because I was supported so much in this way to really stretch myself. And so I'm so grateful for that, because I don't think I would have maybe made the work that I did had I not been in that.
Yeah. I think it's great to be challenged and kind of be thrown over a cliff a little bit, because then you do have to find the parachute that's going to save you. And you know what, anytime that happens, you do making a huge piece. Why would we normally do that? I mean, it's very difficult to store. So making those big pieces is so cool, because you learn when you scale up or scale down, Let's break down one of your pieces. Which one would you like to talk about?
I think I'd like to talk about the installation that I made in New York.
Okay. What's it called?
It's called Despite What We Both Know. It was meant to be kind of like a deconstructed painting. It's really a piece that painting is normally seen in sort of in this 2D stretcher frame format. And I wanted to almost release it from those confines and kind of almost have it escape it. And what would it look like in a 3D space? So really it kind of straddles painting and sculpture in a way. So this is an installation that was made of about 3 painted canvases and draped on top of this wooden frame support structure. Mm-hmm. And so these frames were meant to refer to stretcher panels. So they're made in the shape of stretcher panels, and they kind of interlock.
It's cool because in the room that you had it in, it was like this character that was part of the space, but it kind of deconstructs that white cube with paintings space and creates another character that the audience has to amble around and sort of navigate differently than you would a painting. So it had a much different quality, but it also really references your stuff. Mm-hmm. How did you deal with the to create an image that you like, but using forms that fold and have curvilinear lines and depth?
Yeah, I mean, I never really thought I would be interested in sculpture, but I was just curious to know what it would be like. And so really it was just kind of trial and error. Yeah, a lot of it was this. I didn't really have a sense of what it was going to look like until I had the frame built and had it set up in this hallway section of ours, of where people come into the building, and to start draping and figure out how this is going to work. I really only had a couple hours, and then I had to roll it up and pack it up and send it to New York.
I know that you've made sort of more sculptural pieces that are a bit smaller since then. And did that influence those pieces? Did it kind of send you down a different trajectory of what you would try and do? Because I know you ended up doing these really cool pieces on Tyvek. What were those pieces called, and what show was that, and what show were they in?
So those 2 pieces were part of a window installation that I had as part of my solo show in October in Tan Gallery. And so those pieces, one of them was called Of Beyond and of After, and the other piece is called The Familiar Edge of the Unknown. And these pieces definitely were influenced by that first installation that I did in New York. I wanted to do something sculptural, and the space that was in the window was quite confined, but I still wanted to find a way to be able to draw people in and still reference the paintings that were in the show. And so decided that I would try a different material, which was Tyvek.
So it's such a cool material because it's really resilient. It looks like paper, it folds like paper, and yet it has all these like really like almost like not archival quality, but it's really strong.
Yes,
yeah,
yeah,
so
and
super
also
cool.
very unpredictable because I also didn't know how it would do, and sometimes it would actually hold the form and folds and wrinkles more than I wanted to, and so there's all these kind of things to figure out when you're using a new material. But I liked it because it was lighter. I thought that if I wanted to have it up in the space on a wall, that it's less heavy than canvas, because that's what the other installation was made of. So yeah, it was fun to try that material, and also made it double-sided. So that was another thing I tried to see if it was that I could actually use more of it, because I'd be using the front and the back, so I'd twist it around that way.
What materials do you use? Like, can you name all the materials you're using right now?
Yeah, I think I go through phases, but I in the paintings, it's a lot of it is like spray paint, pastel. I'm just looking around my studio.
Yeah.
Graphite and oil stick, and then sometimes I'm trying monoprints right now, so and sort of collaging some of that in on paper. And then I've done assemblages for using like scrap wood and materials and found objects. And recently I've been trying to like stitch canvas, like cut up canvas together and then reusing scraps of canvas that way. And then I use different tools as well to apply the paint, like squeegees and like sponges and things you find in a hardware store. A hardware store is an amazing place to find things for materials and tools.
You're always trying new materials. You're pushing the expression of your line and gestures through all these materials. So it's those two things are happening simultaneously, it seems, with your work.
Part of it is that I want people to pause and really take the work in, just to have some like time for like slow looking and observation, and so that's part of why I kind of be more conscious in terms of all the layering that I do and the mark making, so that it can encourage people to do that.
What advice do you have for your younger self, or what advice would you have for younger artists?
Looking back, to really like believe in yourself, like to trust your gut, your intuition, to know that you can do this. Like I had such little confidence in my abilities, I think, when I was younger, and I think that really held me back and feel like I couldn't really accomplish a lot. So just knowing that, I missed all these signs too. I feel like there were signs that I could have, that were shown to me, that I could have like looked into. It's like, yeah, maybe art is something that I should like consider, and I totally missed the boat on that. And just like, because I also think that I was not really self-aware, and I was kind of living in this fog. And so that's why I'm saying, like, if I could tell my younger self to like just wake up and like look around and pay more attention to these things, that I can do this. Yeah. And that's another one of my things that I've been telling myself, like, fail and fail harder. Because that's the only way I can figure things out and learn.
Yeah.
everything can be broken down in manageable chunks. And if I could just do that, then it feels much less overwhelming. And so just knowing that things are possible. But I think if I could tell myself like to look at it from that perspective.
Just trusting the fact that making art is in itself useful. And even if you weren't to show it or whatever, there's still something about the making of work that is so healthy and important for humans, you know? And if your aspiration is to be an artist or to work as an artist, then there's all these other things that would have to happen, but just trusting in yourself. Vanessa, do you have an art prompt for us?
This is sort of like a multi-step kind of project, because I feel like a lot of people maybe get stuck, or they are in a rut, you know, they don't know what to do next, or need some inspiration, or even like don't feel like they have a lot of time to make art. And so this is sort of kind of tackles those two things, is that so the first thing is just to gather a bunch of different materials, like some some graphite pencils, some maybe charcoal, and maybe some paint or ink or something. So just keep it in one color family. So like say black or blue, and just make an abstract drawing, just whatever you're feeling, just whatever you want to do on the paper. You make different marks, long, wide, thin, small, big, but give yourself like a time limit. That's the key, like 5 minutes, say, the most. And you can make as many as you want, but at least make 2. And then once you have those, then I want you to cut it up, make a collage. So you want to gather some other materials, but also limit yourself to like 5 minutes and see what you can do with that. And then once you make that, then you can make a painting of it. So use that as a reference. So just use it. You don't have to make exact replica of that, but just like the feeling of it, or if you want to just take a section of it, paint that, and you might want to put it into the collage back in, and so you can break that over 3 sessions. You can do it all together, but I feel like the big thing is having that time limit. You can be amazed at what you can do to really like kickstart something. And I call this kind of like mining your own work. Like people always think, oh, I have no ideas. But you can just go back to things that you've made, and you can come up with new things out of the things that you've already made. So that's the kind of idea behind this, is to sort of find ways to like loosen up and play, really just kind of focus on the process.
I can see behind you, there's a lot of like tests, and they're all really lovely. So kind of create these marks, then cut them up or rip them, shred them, whatever, and then remake them into a collage, but then make the painting a bit bigger, or could we scale up?
Oh yeah. I mean, like you can, make the original drawing on 8.5 by 11, or you can do something bigger, like, 22 by 30 inch, whatever you feel like. It's always nicer if you can do bigger, because then you can like be more free with your movements. The collage can, I find that sometimes the collage, you can just make something small, and sometimes it feels less overwhelming to fill up a big space. It really is up to you. Like you can do a lot with whatever size you want.
What's happening with you in the next year or so?
Been able to collaborate with Artfully, and so that's sort of a new thing right now that you can find some of my work on the artfully.ca website. That's a new platform that features Canadian artists that is actually now under the direction of the Toronto-based Bougie Gallery. So it's nice to be able to be part of this new initiative. So I have some work up there, and you can also find my work on my website, vanessalamfineart.com. On Instagram, my handle is A Drop of Wonder Studio.
And then you are represented in Vancouver by Ian Tan Galleries?
Yes, and you can also find my work at Ian Tan Gallery and Art Rental and Sales in Vancouver operated by the Vancouver Art Gallery.
Okay, well, thank you so much for taking this time, and I'm totally looking forward to seeing what you're building and making in the coming year.
Thanks so much for having me.